Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and this morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Sweet Maxwell, THOMSON, REUTERS. It's a very high quality book. It's part of the British Shipping Laws Library series. This book is called Arnould, Law of Marine Insurance and Average, 19th edition. We've reviewed this before some years ago now, and of course since then we've got a new edition which came out I believe at the end of last year. Yeah, in fact it was October 2018. It's been edited by a number of people, a very distinguished group of people. Jonathan Gilman, Queen's Counsel, Mark Templeman, Queen's Counsel, Claire Blanchard, Queen's Counsel, Philippa Hopkins, Queen's Counsel, and Neil Hart, all of whom are very highly qualified and experienced specialists in this area. Now, for the review, Elizabeth was the lead writer on this particular review, but we did discuss it in detail. And in fact, it's my title at the beginning, and I hope it's not too humorous, because the title we've given our book review is first published in the revolutionary year of 1848. This new 19th edition of Arnould makes a timely appearance. Now, the year of revolutions in 1848, as any historian will know, was a very substantial turning point. And I say that because obviously Arnould is now a very established pedigree within marine insurance law. And therefore I think it's quite important to bear in mind that it has been around for a long time. And of course it's because we are effectively a shipping nation. And of course, as I say, this is part of the British Shipping Laws Library, which I think is an important point to note. Now, what do we say? Before I actually go into the review, let's look at the book. There's not much to it. It's a lovely front cover, and then there's the spine, but there's nothing on the back. It's a heavy book, hardback, and it runs, obviously the pages are quite thin. It does run to a very large 2,000 pages. You can see 2,000 at the bottom there. The actual indexing is by paragraph numbering. Don't be confused with, obviously some books are literally by page numbering, but in this case it's the paragraph numbering itself, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. Let's get to the front. There's a little explanation which Sweet Maxwell always offer about the legal taxonomy, about how the actual detailed index works. But it's important to know how to find things. Here's the front of the book there. It's a heavy book for 2,000 pages. Be careful with the pages because they're quite thin. There's the blurb from Sweet and Maxwell. And then there's a very important preface which I had a good look at, which in fact it comes from Jonathan Gilman of Essex Court Chambers. But it explains really where we are at the moment with the new edition. So that's the preface itself, and it explains the team of people involved. There's some acknowledgements, and after that we get into the table of contents. Very substantial contents running all the way through, and I'm not going to go through them in detail because they are split into various subheads as well as the chapter numbers themselves. The total number of chapters that we've got are 33. Reinsurance being at the end. Then you've got 5 appendices at the back. As I said, it's all by paragraph numbering, so you can see the paragraph numbering is done in a normal way. The number of the chapter, for instance, is in this case 33, which is the final chapter 33 on reinsurance. So you see the chapter number, then the paragraphing in between to find specific areas, and that's how the index runs. There's the table of cases. And I say that because sometimes not apparent quite often when you're looking for something in a hurry as to how it's actually organised. So after the cases you have the statutes, then after the statute, just again, you see how thin the pages are. You've got to be careful. You've got some SI, statutory instruments there, and then you go into the chapters. Each chapter has a nice little index at the front, which makes it easy to find things quite quickly, I think. But there are a lot of footnoting. There's a lot of footnoting throughout. You can see even in just getting to halfway through how detailed it all is. It's a very substantial work, and it is the foremost legal authority. We've got halfway through where the divider is there. You can see where we are. So there we go. So what do we say about the book then? So say we've reviewed it before over the years, and for some people it may be a bit confusing, but let me explain in simpler terms what it's about. It's entitled Arnould, Law of Marine Insurance and Average. This distinguished volume from Sweet Maxwell, Thomson Reuters ranks in our view as one of the heavyweight, definitely, statements of insurance law published at a time of change. We can't help but recall, somewhat whimsically, that 1848 was the year that the first edition by Sir Joseph Arnould was published, and was also, of course, the year of multiple revolutions, as I've indicated, on the European continent. And of course, this new edition, published recently in 2018, although in 2019 now, was another year with an 8 in it. But that's the only thing I can really say. But it has emerged coincidentally in a few months preceding our withdrawal from Europe. And that's, again, in many ways, although we're living through it, and I'm recording this at the beginning of 2019, we're living through what is a bit of a revolutionary period, putting it in its nicest form, with Brexit. Now, this new edition, the 19th of Arnould, could well presage another revolution of another kind, considering the upheavals of aforementioned Brexit. But then this is, of course, speculation by us. What isn't speculation is that following a relatively slow and steady evolution, there's been a relatively recent and dramatic acceleration in the pace of marine insurance law, as pointed out by the editors of the latest Arnould, and reflecting the developments, of course, of recent years, particularly those that have emerged since the previous edition came out in 2013. So that this new edition has been extensively updated, as explained by Jonathan Gilman, Queen's Counsel, at the beginning, and it obviously has expanded, of course, to over 2,000 pages. And as I say, take a bit of care with the pages because they're quite thin. But again, that is the case with many of these heavier publications because they've got a huge amount of information actually contained in them. Leading an expert team then, you've got the editor, Jonathan Gilman, making special reference, for example, to two reforms embedded in the Consumer Insurance and Disclosure and Representation Act of 2012 and the Insurance Act of 2015. And these reforms have generated several changes to, quote, the law relating to misrepresentation and non-disclosure, the effect of breaches of warranty, and the availability of a remedy for damages for non-payment. And we're reminded, of course, that the CIDRA reforms, that's the Consumer Information, Disclosure and Representations Act, were discussed in the 2013 edition. At the time it had just literally come in, and of course those emanating from the 2015 Act were for the most part covered in one of the supplements, but what we've now got is the new edition itself. And so for the new edition, says the author, it provides the first opportunity to integrate discussion of the new regimes within the framework of the book as a whole, and there's a valuable advantage here for busy practitioners. And I would add, of course, that whenever you have statutory change, it does take a while for things to settle down, and that's one of the reasons I think the book has come out at the time it has. And for such a highly specialised area such as marine insurance law, this definitive text provides insights and commentary that practitioners inevitably need when providing clients with authoritative and accurate advice, as the reader is guided through what are often technical and perhaps contradictory subtleties that lie in wait for the unwary. It's not the easiest subject in terms of substantive law issues, but of course it's an important area, both in terms of money and legal precedent. Now, fortunately, I think the book works well as a work of reference for all. The detailed table of contents and the index of 60-odd pages do simplify looking things up, and it's not that difficult actually to navigate. Paragraphs are numbered throughout, and for those doing further research, there's a wealth of references in the copious footnoting, and of course there are lengthy tables of cases, statutes, and statutory instruments. The 5 appendices include the Marine Insurance Act 1906, as well as the Insurance Act 2015, which I mentioned earlier, and the York-Antwerp rules from 2016, plus of course marine insurance policy forms and clauses. Let me conclude by saying this: for specialists in marine insurance law, the new Arnould is indispensable. Quite clearly the case, because it is effectively where the law can be found, and every practitioner in this complex and challenge area, of course, should have a copy. And the date of publication is cited as at the 25th of October 2018. Let's have one last look at the book, if you can see it. It's the lighting's not so good now. There's the front, there's the side. It's British Shipping Laws Library. There's nothing on the back. If I just open it in the middle, as I say, be careful with the pages because they're very, very thin. This is the fraud exception, the Hampshire land principle we're looking at there. You can see what we've got. You've got your paragraph numbering at the sides, and you've got the footnoting. So it's not difficult to find. You've got a lot. You can see a lot of case law is discussed as well, which I think is extremely helpful. And of course, it is very much for detailed practitioners in this area. A big thank you anyway to all involved, and of course to Sweet Maxwell for continuing to publish these works. You make our lives a lot easier with these publications, and I'd like to thank all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.